It's a nice early start, and we like those because that means that you get more of the day ahead of you to do a whole lot of things, discover more places, and of course drive more kilometers.
I'm on the road, heading in one direction. I got a soul, looking for interaction. Some of the best times, some of the best times are falling over. Some of the best times when I'm bumping into you, skin is aglow.
It's going to be 530 odd kilometers this morning from Coffs Harbour to Australia's financial capital, the great city of Sydney.
But I'm looking forward to finishing these 550 kilometers because Australian motorways are really boring. There's nothing. It's okay, it looks nice, but after a while, this looks nice business, it becomes a bit monotonous. For the past 3 hours, I've been looking at the backside of the GLA, and no matter how good the backside is, after a while, it gets a little tedious. So it's a boring drive. You need a lot of coffee to stay awake.
You want to look at the Sydney Harbour Bridge, you want to look at the Opera House, and you really know you're in Australia, right? So we've done the kangaroos, now it's time for those sights as well.
Every day's a new day. I hope that you feel it too. Every day's a new day when I'm bumping into you.
So of course we wanted to get this view and we wanted to show it to you as well because it is an iconic view.
So this is the Harbour Bridge, and that's the Opera House.
Both together actually, along with the water in between, are really what a lot of people identify as the most famous landmark of Sydney. Harbour Bridge, of course, we just drove across it, so we're very excited about that. It opened in 1932. It has, I guess, 8 lanes for cars, but it also has 2 train tracks, 1 cycle track, and 1 pedestrian track.
And something more about the Opera House now?
Well, all right, I guess it's...
So when was that built?
1973 is when it opened its doors, and Danish architect, don't ask me how to pronounce his name, but he's the one who actually designed it. It's actually got multiple halls inside, and it hosts up to 1,500 performances in a year, and over 1 million people attend those performances. So they call it the Thunder Jet, and what it does is it kind of whips you around, spins you around, splashes you, which is where we're dressed.
Very fashionably.
Yeah, from, you know, this is just straight off the runways at
there's a Gucci showroom right here. We drifted on a track, and now we drifted on water.
Now, the Indian Telegraph is a local Sydney newspaper that caters to the Indian diaspora here, and it's not just in Sydney, of course, but online, available to the entire community across this country. So we have someone from that publication joining us. Vish Vishwanathan, it's a pretty huge community. I mean, a lot of Indian people here.
Yeah, we are in Sydney alone approximately about 200,000 Indians. The community is growing so fast that we have a couple of holy festivals. You take every month. It starts with the New Year, and then it goes to the Vaisakhi, and then the Holi, and then you have the other festivals.
We were very excited about coming to Australia. We definitely wanted to come to Sydney. Thank you for speaking to us and joining us today. Also, your publication, all the very best.
It's 7 in the morning and we are heading out of Sydney. Today is a very long day, but I'm excited. We are heading to Bathurst, which is the home of Australian motorsport, Australian circuit racing. And from there, we'll be heading to Melbourne.
We're on the road heading not directly down to Melbourne, but we kind of detoured into the Blue Mountains, which are a very beautiful part of Australia. The Blue Mountains are famous for their gorgeous vistas and great landscape, and of course called Blue Mountains like the Nilgiris in India. So far, beautiful blue skies. It's been a nice start to the morning. Looking forward to those gorgeous vistas.
Blue Mountains. They call that because of the forest of eucalyptus here. The eucalyptus leaves in the hot sun, they give out a certain oil, and that mist from the oil, it reflects light. So from a distance, it tends to look blue. And you can see it from Sydney, the entire ridge, it all looks blue.
Possibly the most famous tourist landmark in the Blue Mountains, the Three Sisters, which is a beautiful rock formation that goes back thousands of years. Millions of people flock here every year to look at it, and I think about 1 million of them are here right now as well. Aboriginal folklore says that these were actually three sisters from the Katoomba tribe. The three sisters fell in love with three handsome brothers from a neighboring tribe, but typical tribe sort of dynamics. And so they couldn't marry them because these were enemy tribes. So the three brothers decided that they'll come in and take these women by force. And so, of course, both tribes went to battle. And the elder brother of the three sisters turned them to stone to protect them, saying, once the war is won, he'll turn them back. He was killed in the battle. Nobody else could turn them back. And that's why they stand like this even today.
So here's something new that we discovered in Australia. The country actually has corners. This morning there was a huge debate whether should we go to Bathurst or not, because we have a long drive to Melbourne ahead of us. But since Bathurst has the racetrack, we decided, okay, we should go there. And fortunately, the road snakes through the Blue Mountains. This is a spectacular driving road. The speeds are not very high, but it's got corners. You're actually turning the steering wheel. Finally, we're enjoying the drive in Australia.
This is our first museum visit here in Australia. It's the National Motor Racing Museum. We're about 200 kilometers away from Sydney now in Bathurst, and it sits right next to the Mount Panorama racetrack. And this is, of course, Peter Brock. He won the race here 9 times, and so in commemoration to that, plenty more heritage insights. So, shall we?
Yep.
multiple champion, Peter Brock. We showed you that sculpture outside. Now, this is that car, the same one that's in that sculpture, because, of course, it was the car that helped him complete a hat-trick of wins at the Bathurst 1000. Next to this car, which, of course, won in 1984, you have this one, which is a much older car, the Ford Cortina, which won way back in 1965. And, you know, putting these two cars next to each other, it's a nice little contrast of how much things changed in motor racing.
So the V8 touring car series in Australia has always been about Ford and Holden, but it's not always been so. This is a standout car. Earlier, it used to be the Falcon with this huge body, big engine, and GM, Holden in fact, used to race with the Turano, which was a much smaller car, of course with a big engine. But if you see the difference in the size, this was how the classic rivalry was.
Well, it just shows you how much more commercial things got as well. And then, as if the 80s weren't bad enough, well, it just got even more commercial much later. And so take a look at this one. The 2006 champion Falcon is even more sort of bathed in brands. So it's nice. And that's the thing that you always pick up at museums.
Bathurst actually started off with motorcycle racing, and that's why at the Motor Museum there are a lot of bikes. This is the McRae Special. It actually won here at Bathurst. It's a sidecar, and those sidecar guys are absolute lunatics. Bikes don't race anymore at Bathurst because the circuit is too tight, there are no runoffs, so it's very dangerous for motorcycles. And pride of place at the Motor Museum is Wayne Gardner's 87 title-winning Honda. This is the two-stroke bike. Gardner is one of Australia's greatest motorcycle racers. Of course, Nick Doohan, everybody knows of him too. Australia produced a lot of great racing drivers and riders, and all of them are commemorated here at the Racing Museum.